external rotator is needed for tennis, right? As well as other muscles. In baseball, how does he get into that big externally rotated position? Again, we talked about this last week. When you do freestyle, after you go in the water, you have to come back and you're up into externally rotated. Although my arm is up and my thumb is pointed backwards, I'm still in external rotation, because if you take me back down to anatomical position, then that's where I'm at. I'm still in external rotation, as opposed to when a swimmer enters the water. What is the internal rotators of the shoulder? We learned about them last week. We learned about one. I don't think we've talked about the teres minor, and the infraspinatus is an internal rotator. So if you were to take me into anatomical position, say I'm showing you the swim stroke, you say, whoa, what position is that? Well, put me back in anatomical, and I'm internally rotated. So you can always figure out something if you go back to anatomical position. So let's look at the teres major. The teres major's job is to get you into extension after you are coming back from flexion. It also assists with internal rotation with the subscapularis. And you don't need to know the third one, okay? So what does that mean? Extension from the flexed position. So that means you're up here. Say I wanted to do some type of extension, strengthening. So when I start here and I come down, that's where the teres is an assister. Also, what other muscles pull me into shoulder extension? Because the teres can't do that by itself. So let's just say from here. Posterior deltoid, what else? Doesn't the latissimus assist? Yes? Okay. As you can see, it originates off of the medial border of the scapula and inserts into the medial humerus. Remember, anteriors are usually flexors, posteriors are usually extensors, lateral muscles are abductors, and medial muscles are internal rotators or adductors. So if you just know that, if I posted this right now from A-P Revealed, you can see it was the back, and if you're like, gosh, I don't remember what muscle that is, you could see it was a muscle that was on the back of the scapula, and you could say, okay, well, I don't know what to call it, but I know what it does. You'd at least get half the credit. So this is more of a lat pull down, obviously. The teres does assist because right here, he's coming into extension from a flexed shoulder position. It is some abduction, but it's also flexion and coming back. Again, the teres can't do that major, can't do it by itself. It's also an internal rotator, like we saw with the subscapularis, lightweight. And this is the exercise we could do if we just wanted somebody to focus on their posterior scapula. And this is definitely an exercise we would do in the clinic. Just move your arms up and then move them down. That's it. So if we wanted to add resistance, this is how you could do it. Give a person a TheraBand and go down like this, specifically for the teres major. Here are a couple other examples. This follow-through part of the swing is internal, the shoulders going into internal rotation. The rock climber. A rock climber has to have really strong, you'd think that they would have to have, just thinking about, okay, how is it that you stay glued to the rock? Well, how is it that you get up the rock. They have really strong shoulder extensor muscles. And here's just a couple more. I think you guys can picture the extension. So she's in an externally rotated position here. When you row, you go into extension, and he's going into extension here. And then this is the final one that I told you didn't have to worry about. The gymnastics guy going from AB deduction. Isn't this called the iron cross when they're like this? Like this, I could never do that. And then they pull up into this kind of Pike's position. So the teres assist with that. All right, we talked about stretching. How would you lengthen it? This is a great stretch. You need to do this more. And then over the head, right? Thinking about where the teres originates from. So we want to take the scapula. His scapula's here. It's upwardly rotated and elevated, but we're going to still try and take the arm even further away. I forgot that was in there. So this is the subclavius muscle. I don't know why that effect came, but it's very small, and it's called the subclavius because it's underneath the clavicle. And basically it assists the clavicle in depression. Honestly, I don't think I'm going to ask you a question about the subclavius. It's kind of like the popliteus in the back of the knee. It's a very minor muscle, but necessary for depression of the clavicle. And it's a stabilizer as well. But it doesn't even appear, so it's small that it doesn't even appear on our AP Revealed. It has to be dissected away. So I don't want you to worry about the subclavius. So let me just look at, I don't feel like we've talked about the infraspinatus yet. Maybe it's on the other one. If we don't come to it, I'll go back to it. So now we're going to talk about the coracobrachialis muscle. This is an anterior view, right? It originates from the coracoid process, which is on the scapula, and it inserts into the medial humerus here. And mainly it's a flexor, a synergist with, what other flexors do we know? Anterior deltoid. It's also a horizontal adductor. What is another horizontal adductor that we know? Pec major, right? Not the pec minor. And a plain adductor. So the coracobrachialis isn't a very big, it's not a very strong muscle, so therefore I don't talk about it necessarily by itself. You could do horizontal adduction exercises, but remember, it's a synergist in its actions, okay? Hold on, I clicked the wrong one. All right, now we've all seen this on AP Revealed, so let's look at the big latissimus dorsi muscle. So it's a shoulder joint adductor and it's a shoulder joint extensor. I feel like you all could recognize this if you saw it in AP Revealed. Where is it, if you had to describe it in relationship to the rest of the back muscles, where could you describe it? What would be a descriptive word? As where it's at. It's more superficial. That's exactly it. So this is the most superficial muscle in the back, along with the trapezius fibers, upper, middle, and lower. It also assists with internal rotation, but I don't want you to learn internal rotator or horizontal abductor, because we have other more powerful internal rotators. How would we strengthen the latissimus muscle? Well, we could do pull-ups, right? We could do dips, because you are working in extension. So you're working in shoulder extension. Does everybody know what a dip looks like? Right? You could do them on the machine, or you could do them off the table. So I'm already in horizontal. Actually, it's more for the extension. So going like this, straight back. That's a mini one. I want my feet to slip. A lat pull down. The exercise is basically named for the muscle. I see a lot of people performing lat pull downs incorrectly in my weight training class, or even just in the fitness lab. So because of the position of the muscle, basically, pulling straight down is not really strengthening your latissimus. You have to pull from a flexed position into an extended position like this, right? So your shoulder has to go into extension. So if you're lifting, you're doing a lat pull down, you should be in a little bit of extension in your spine, and then pull down this way to your sternum. So a lat pull down exercise, and you can see she's actually in that position here, leaning back. You could do lat pullovers like this. And those are way too many. If you just memorize a couple of them, you can also do some seated rows, moving into extension again. How do we stretch the lats? So the lats are a great exercise, or a great muscle, I feel like, to stretch. You could do it bent over. You also need to do it with some rotation. So this is, again, just one way. If you do a lat stretch going this way, that too will stretch that big muscle. Lots of different ways you can stretch. So those of you doing part 4 in your paper, use the PowerPoints as a resource if you'd like. All right, so when are the lats important? Well, when we look at these different skills, you should be able to figure it out. You should be looking at, by this point of the class, you should be looking at what muscle is used here in plantar flexion. What muscle is used in this slight knee flexion? His hip is externally rotated and extended. So what muscles are being used then? His trunk is right lateral rotation. He has right lateral rotation. What muscles is he using? His scapula is adducted. His shoulder is externally rotated. His elbow is flexed. And his wrist is in about a neutral position, so he's not flexed and he's not extended. His cervical spine is rotated to the left. I think I said left rotation. He's actually in right rotation, like this. All right? You will have to do that for the final. You will have to look at a picture and tell me the motion and tell me a prime mover, just one. So each part of the body. That's what you have to do for your paper. It's somebody else's part, but it's still your paper, so you should be knowledgeable. And you should know all the muscles and the joint actions by this time anyway. So that will be on your final. All right, so latissimus in sports skills. And we will start up here tomorrow. We'll probably move into the next chapter. I believe it's chapter 6, the elbow joint. We'll probably be starting that tomorrow or the next day. Thank you. Have a good day.